All right, so thank you everyone for joining us on today's webinar on securing and simplifying the management of endpoints for your cloud workspaces. My name is Omar Kechrid. I'm the VP of Business Development at ZTeam, and I'll be starting us off here. I'm joined by my colleague Prerak Sola, who is a product manager, and who will take us through the more technical part of the webinar, including the demo. So just a little bit about ZTeam. ZTeam is a leading vendor in the end user computing space. Our focus is addressing challenges, on addressing challenges from an end user computing centric view. Our journey started off as a system integrator, and to this day, we have a sister company in France, which is involved in some very interesting virtualization and cloud desktop and application initiatives. This is what allows us to keep a very close pulse on customers and their needs, and this is what drives our innovation and the products that we release. Over the years, we've developed a very interesting portfolio of solutions aligned with key vendors in the end user computing space, such as Citrix, VMware, Nutanix, Microsoft, and others. At the end of the day, if a company has opted to have a virtual workspace, then ZTeam can surely provide value. Many of you who have joined us on the call today are likely running one of the virtualization technologies that I just mentioned, and you probably did so to gain several benefits. By moving from multiple scattered virtual or physical desktops to a centralized virtual desktop application or virtual workspace, IT gains a great deal of control. The desktops are easier to manage, easier to back up, you have a better security and data protection posture, and actually the experience to the users should be good, or sometimes it's even better than on a physical device. It comes down to the platform, but that is definitely possible. So these are all great reasons to move towards virtual or cloud workspaces, and with the onset of COVID, we've seen that it pushed many companies to rely even more on these technologies. And now with the return back to the office, hybrid mode, we're not seeing, the trend stop. Companies are finding that they're finding a lot of simplicity and flexibility going to virtual workspaces. However, what about the endpoint, or what many call the last mile? Although we see many companies that have made the move to virtual workspaces, a large majority of these companies still run heavy OS platforms at the endpoint, such as Windows. While there may be a good reason for that, in the majority of instances that we've seen, it's simply unnecessary. The objective initially was to centralize the management, but by having Windows endpoints at the edge, IT goes back to a decentralized approach. Of course, there are useful patching tools out there, which you can claim to, that runs centrally, but what if you can get rid of patching altogether? With an OS like Windows, there's a lot of moving parts. You have to, at minimum, ensure that patches are in place, that the proper antivirus and security tools are running. Also, Windows machines are usually tied to your Active Directory, and this, exposes you to another, gives another attack surface that can be attacked. So there are chances of something going wrong. So again, Windows is a vast platform and a lot can go wrong. It can be malevolent attacks to users just messing with something that they should not mess with. Sometimes they do it inadvertently. But at the end of the day, I think that everyone can agree that this is an overhead that IT can do without, especially if you've already made the move to centralizing that, the desktops and applications. So today we'll be focusing on an endpoint OS, which we call ZOS, which we feel fulfills this need and is ideal for virtual workspaces. ZOS is Linux-based and extremely lightweight, requiring as little as 2 gigs of RAM and 8 gigs of disk space. The primary objective of the OS is to be ultra secure, being that it's read-only, and it comes with minimal packages that run independently and do not even talk to one another. The OS cannot be configured locally, and all the configuration is done via ZConf, the central management console. The OS is also tuned for virtual apps and desktops, and in many tests we have seen superior performance to that of Windows. We work closely with partners like Citrix and VMware on things like Teams and Zoom optimization. So we try to stay at, on top of this in terms of how the operating system performs when it connects to those virtual workspaces. We also have a lot of experience with peripherals, as well as we work to ensure things like printers, scanners, card readers all run smoothly. If anyone has looked at ZTeam, you'll see that we do go a little bit beyond the endpoint. So we also touch areas like printing, identity, authentication. So those are other areas that you can rely on ZTeam for. So back to the operating system, as our CTO Sabir Tapori often says, the goal of our OS is to make for an endpoint that is truly a dumb terminal, just like your mouse and keyboard. At the end of the day, we don't mind saying that we want to have a dumb OS. Dumb in a good way, of course. These are devices that, this makes for devices that work right out of the box, provide a specific purpose, and rarely do they need to be tampered with. Apart from updating the virtual workspace client or browser client when releases come out, there's little that has to be maintained on ZOS. And again, everything is done through the management tool. In terms of hardware, we do provide a hardware, but we are hardware agnostic. Our strength and focus is on the software, so as long as you have an x86 device, we should be able to run ZOS no problem. In fact, we encourage companies to extend the life of their hardware as long and as much as possible. The process of conversion, which Prerak will take us through, is done via a simple way through a tool called Z-Transformer. So once the device running ZOS is connected to the network, all configurations are applied in zero-touch fashion through ZConf. ZConf is our management tool from which all configurations are applied. We can manage devices from anywhere, as this tool comes with a gateway allowing secure access to any device outside of the LAN. Prerak will spend a good bit of time going over this today. He'll also show us a configuration tool from which endpoint settings are configured. And he'll also show us a web management tool, which is more of a help desk support tool, providing necessary visibility and remote controls. So to summarize, with the ZTeam endpoint solution, we're able to achieve a true dumb terminal at the endpoint whose sole purpose is to give us access to our virtual workspaces. The endpoint will be secure and not a vulnerability for the environment. It'll be easier to manage, require little hands-on, and allow control to IT from anywhere, and your users will have a smooth experience. If you look at cost, not just of the solution, but that of your IT operation with such a solution, you'll notice that there can be great gains. If you're able to repurpose existing hardware, those gains are going to be even greater. Not to mention, you're also going to be moving in a greener direction. Also, once you've used your hardware to the maximum life, and you opt for thin clients, if you go for proper thin client hardware, the energy consumption is way less. So that'll also allow for some additional cost savings. Last and very important to the success of such a project is the vendor behind the solution, as there's often a partnership that is formed between the vendor and the customer. And we at ZTeam feel very well positioned in this regard. And hopefully after you experience us a little bit, you'll feel the same way. So with that said, I'm going to give it off to Prerak to dive deeper into how ZTeam's endpoint solution works. Just a couple of notes before. For those that like what they see with the solution, please reach out to us and we'll get you free licenses. We're giving 10 free licenses, and they are concurrent, they're yours to keep, of our operating system, but also coming with the management tool. We also are happy to run training session, so touch base with our team, and we will set you up with a training session, or we can assist you as you try out the products. So that said, Prerak, the floor is yours. I'm sure that everyone is eager to see how the technology actually works. Prerak?
Yeah, yes. So thanks, Omar, for this introduction about what ZTeam is and what we have to, and I mean what we provide for the companies who are in using virtualization for their IT systems. Okay, so to start with, what we'll see during the demo is the very first thing that we'll see is how you could convert your existing hardware into a device running ZOS using our tool ZTransformer. Okay. After that, we'll have a look at the architecture of the whole solution. This will give you an insight about all the different components that are present and how they interact with each other. And lastly, we'll have a look at the management tool, that's ZConf. Okay, so we'll have a look. So there are two parts of the management tool. So we'll have look at both of them one by one. And also, before we start, here are some of the terms that you'll hear quite often. So just to remind you, so ZOS is the operating system developed by ZTeam. Okay, it's a Linux-based OS. ZeeTim or ZTransformer, so it's a device that is running ZOS. So ZeeTim is the physical device that we have. Okay, and ZTransformer is the tool that we use to convert existing machine, okay, a laptop or any other thin client, into a device running ZOS. Again, ZConf is the management tool that I just told. So okay, so there are two parts to that. So one is a Windows-based tool, and another is the web-based management console. And ZConf also consists of a server component and the database component. In the architecture diagram, we'll see how these components are aligned and how they work together. Okay, so to start with, like to convert your existing PC into a thin client, okay, it's a very easy and a small process. It doesn't take a lot of time. The only thing that you need is a device that you'll convert and a USB that on which you'll boot. Okay, so the very first thing that you need to do is you go to our website, okay, www.zeeteam.com, and in the product file page, you have the download link to the trial version of the ZTransformer tool. Okay, so once that's downloaded, you simply extract the downloaded zip, and it will have two components. So one is ZTransformer, the tool to convert, and another one is the management tool, okay, to manage the device. So in ZTransformer, you just select the USB, okay, that we will use to convert the device. Okay, select the USB and just click on create button, create button. So once this process is complete, okay, it hardly takes time. Okay, so once this is done, you simply boot your device that you want to convert using this USB. The only thing that you need to take care is secure boot is disabled in your BIOS settings to make this work. So yes, so yep, from the boot menu, you just boot off the USB, and there you have. Okay, so we'll have the ZOS running. It's running from the USB. So you have the ZOS running on the machine. The machine is partially converted now. Okay. And the last step would be to configure this machine. Okay, so the file that you downloaded also contains the management tool. So you just launch the tool, and if the machine running the tool and the converted device are in the same network, it will automatically detect that machine. Okay, and then you have the ability to manage and configure that device. What different configurations can be done? We'll have a look at those things during the demo of the management tool. Okay. So next, for the architecture diagram, okay, so there are multiple components that are present in the architecture diagram. Okay, so the very first and the most important component are the endpoint devices. So, okay, so you have the endpoint devices, so they can either be in the user LAN, okay, so those are the users working from the office, and they can also be in the public network. So these are the users that are working remotely. Next is the management part. Okay, the interface that will be used by the administrators. So we have the Windows-based client is called ZConf client. Okay, it's a Windows-based tool, and the web and ZConf web management console. The one on the right is the web-based tool. Okay, that is more of kind of targeted for the help desk and the support people, and it gives you some analytics and allows you to monitor the deployed devices. After that, these two are, let's say, the backbone of the solution. So we have the ZCOM server service. So it's a Windows-based Windows service. Okay, and we also have the license server. Okay, so this is also a Windows service. ZCOM server is kind of an orchestrator. It's responsible for enabling the communication between different components that we have over here. And like both of these, like I said, are Windows service. So like they can be installed on any Windows machine, okay, or Windows 10 or any Windows Server OS. They're quite lightweight, and you don't need dedicated machines for those, for these two things. And lastly, we have the gateway. So gateway is mainly used for managing the devices that are connected from outside. So in the scenario, the user is working from home or even from any other place. So the gateway allows the administrators to manage these outside devices in the same way like that he's managing the devices that are present inside the network. So from an administrator's point of view, it's very seamless for him. So it's quite intuitive. Yeah, it helps in that way. Now, it may seem like there are many components, okay, but this is kind of, let's say, a production setup. But if you are just testing out our product, so the only thing that you need is one Windows machine, okay, on which you'll run the tool and create the USB, and another machine to transform or convert into a convert and run ZOS on it. So and you can run the ZConf client on a Windows machine, okay, the same machine that you use to convert. So you only need, let's say, two machines for testing out our products. And once we go into the, let's say, the POC or the production phase, then we can have a look at all the components based on the requirements. Okay, so now let's dive into the demo part. Okay, just a moment. Yeah. Okay, so for the demo, we'll start with the Windows-based tool, okay, and we'll have a look at the web-based one after this. So this is the ZConf client, okay, the management tool that will be used by the administrators to manage and configure the endpoint devices. Okay. This can be installed on any Windows machine, okay, or if needed, you can also run it as a standalone mode. Okay, it's just one single exe with a couple of DLS, and you could like just copy those couple of files on any Windows machine, and you could just run the client out of there. So the very first thing that you'll notice on this is a tree-like structure on the left-hand side. Okay, so you have different groups and subgroups over here. Okay, so these are the list of devices that are present over there. Okay, and you could classify this devices into different groups and subgroups. You could have many subgroups. There's no limitation to that. This classification can be done on multiple parameters, or let's say in multiple ways, depending on how you want to organize your devices. So they can either be based on the geographical location, like we have over here, or it can also be based on the department. Let's say you have IT, HR, accounting, marketing, things like that. And lastly, it can also be based on the IP range of your subnets. Okay, so you could have like devices coming from one single IP range or one single subnet into a dedicated group. Also, from a reseller's point of view, this tool is multi-tenant compliant. Okay, so if you have like multiple clients, so you could manage the devices of all your clients from one single point. So you could have groups dedicated to one single client also. So that's also one of the very good features of this tool. Apart from supporting multi-tenancy, this tool works on a role-based access control model. So to say, you could assign which administrator and see which devices or which groups. So in a scenario, let's say you have you are like managing 5 different clients and you have like 5 administrators for those 5 clients, then you could define the rule set in such a way that the administrator A will only see the devices of client A. He'll not have access to the devices of any other clients, and he won't even see them over here. So this allows us to let's say distribute the work for the administrators, and also allows us to better control the accessibility of the devices and the configuration. One of the other important feature, and the one that is mostly used by most of our customers, is the templating feature. Okay, so templates are basically similar to GPOs that we have in Windows. Okay, and in our case, these templates are very granular. Okay, so it's a configuration file with some configurations that you want. Okay, and like they are very granular. You'll have every minute configuration that can be configured on the device. So for example, over here, if you see, you have like, I'll just go through some very basic, like from the top on all the some configurations. So for example, over here, you have the time, or even the keyboard layout and the language and stuff like that. If you want to get a bit more specific, then we also have the network configuration dedicated to some virtualization service providers, so such as Citrix, VMware, okay, and stuff like that. So you could even select one single configuration, create a template out of that. Now, what's the use of creating these templates? Okay, so once you create a template, so this template can be applied on a device, or it can be assigned to a group. Now let's have a walkthrough of a deployment process. Now, so if we are using our solution, so what administrator will do is he'll create a template, okay, from one single device. So he'll configure one single device, okay, based on the different tabs that you see in the, okay. I will go through some of the tabs also, but the administrator will create a configure one single device, okay, using these tabs, assign the required configuration, and then create a template out of the configuration. Once that is done, he could assign this template to a group. Okay, so let's say he has assigned that template to group Texas. Now, one thing about the groups is that over here. So for when you create a group, you could provide an IP range. Okay, so for example, if you have provided a subnet, and whenever a new device is connected to the network, and if he gets the IP range he gets an IP address that falls in this range, the device will automatically come in this group. Now, as one of the templates is assigned to this group, the device will automatically pick that template, apply that configuration on itself, and it will be ready to use. So this is something that we call zero-touch deployment. So there's only one important thing that the administrator had to do, was to create the one template with the good configuration and assign it to the groups. Now, once that is done, as soon as the devices turns on, it gets the IP address, it will automatically go in the good group, pick the configuration, and apply it on itself. So there's no added step that had to be done from the administrator or even from the user. The user just plugs in the device, turns it on, and he'll have the configuration ready, and he's good to go with the device. And this is what we use for deployments as well as updates. Okay, so in case you are pushing some update of any configuration, so templates is the way to go to make it, let's say, hassle-free and in a very short period of time. Now we'll have a look at some of the configuration tabs that are available over here for one single device. Okay, so when I double click on the device, it connects the device via SSH and gets the configuration. So over here in the general tab, you have all the general settings such as the domain, the keyboard, the language, the time zone, and stuff like that. The important thing over here is the server URL that you have in the bottom. So this is the URL of the ZCOM server. It was one of the components that we saw in the architecture diagram. So you could provide this URL from here, of course, and there's also one more way to provide this URL. So you could configure this URL on your DHCP server as well. So whenever that a new device turns on and when it will connect to a DHCP server, it will automatically get this server URL from there and it will register itself on the server. And also one other good thing over here is the startup URL. So this URL is for the browsers. Our operating system comes with two browsers, Chrome and Firefox. So this is a startup URL for those two browsers. So this can be your, let's say, Citrix workspace URL or VMware workspace URL or even the RDS web console URL if you want. Talking about different modes, okay, so our device can run in two modes. So one is the zero client mode or kiosk mode. So what happens is in this, if you are running the device in zero client mode, you select one of the applications that are installed on the OS. So for example, if I select Chrome, so what will happen is whenever we turn on the device, it will launch Chrome in kiosk mode and it will go to the startup URL that we have set over here in the general tab. So from the user's point of view, the end user's point of view, as soon as he turns on the machine, he'll see the login page to his virtual workspace environment. And he'll never see the host OS. Okay, he'll not even able to interact with it. So for the users, it's like he's using let's say a standard machine, and it's quite so it gives the kind of confidence to the users as well. Or in the scenario, if you want to, let's say, give them a standard desktop environment, you could also run the device in a desktop mode. So when it's running in the desktop mode, you could configure how the start menu looks, what different shortcuts you want on the desktops. We have the list of applications that are on the device. So it's quite simple. You just drag and drop these things over here and then arrange as per your requirements. Yes. Now, we have also got some dedicated tabs for different virtualization providers. For example, we have Citrix over here. So here, you can configure different parameters concerning Citrix. So for example, you could map your drives, assign the permissions to those. Okay, redirection. You could allow or deny certain USB ports if you want. Okay, or USB devices. Sorry. You also have the view to configure some parameters for the Citrix client that we have. And yeah, like the current version of our operating system, like the latest version of our operating system comes with the latest Citrix Workspace app. That is, I presume, 2112, if I'm not mistaken. And you also have the different parameters over here to configure those things. There are certain parameters which can be only configured through command line. So we've added those also over here, so it's easier for the administrator to configure them. And of course, you have some other options on the bottom to activate or deactivate certain optimization packs such as Teams or for HDX and stuff like that. Similarly, we have some configuration parameters for VMware as well. Okay, so your broker, which protocol you want to use, BLAST or PCOIP, and yeah, what should happen to the USB when they are connected and stuff like that. And yes, and same goes for Nutanix and as well as RDX if you're using the Windows environment. Now, if your users are connecting to some applications, and in certain scenarios, you might need to install some certificates on the device, okay, to access those applications. So in the security tab, you have the ability to add your certificates, okay, or this can be in-house certificates or self-signed certificates. So you could add those. You could add your intermediate certificates as well. We have Java also installed as part of the OS. Okay, so if you have some legacy applications or old applications that are still running on Java, and so they could make use of it. And Java comes with a key store as well. So if you want to store some sensitive information, that can be done over here. ZKey, the thing that you see on the right hand side. So this is one of our other products. Okay, so ZKey is a secure USB, and it acts as a password vault. Okay, the USB cannot be copied by anyone. So the main purpose of ZKey is that it allows it autofills the credentials on the applications. So let's say, so the basic scenario or the use case of ZKey is like the user comes on the machine, he puts in the USB, he'll enter a pin, okay, to unlock the key. And once he enters the pin, and if he visits, let's say, one of the configured websites, the ZKey will automatically fill the credentials and log in the user. And once he removes the key, he'll be automatically disconnected from the session he's connected to. Okay, so this is very useful in medical or retail fields, okay, where the nurses or the cashiers are moving from one point to another point and they need to do it pretty fast. So ZKey can allow them to do it in a, let's say, a secure way, and the user experience also improves a lot. We also have VPN. Okay, so in case you need to connect to some of your services using a VPN, such as NetScaler or something, so you could configure those parameters also over here. Okay, and on the bottom you have the configuration for the gateway. So ZCOM gateway is one of the components that we saw in the diagram. So once again, gateway allows you to seamlessly manage the devices that are outside of your enterprise network. And yeah, it can be very useful if the users are working remotely. Yes. For talking about printing, so printing is also one of the areas in which we are quite experienced. Okay, so we have a dedicated printing solution called ZPrint, okay, which can be used to let's say centralize your printing management, reduce the print servers, and it also reduces the bandwidth that's consumed by print jobs. Okay, so like we can deploy ZPrint to cover many scenarios. Okay, and some of the configuration for this can be done over here. But apart from ZPrint, our OS also supports different type of printers. Okay, so it can be, or let's say, network printers or redirected or even IC printers. Like there are some old printers such as AS400, so we are able to support that as well. From the Windows management tool point of view, so these are some of the key points that we have. Okay, there are a lot of other things, but we won't go into those details. Okay. But now let's quickly have a look at the web-based tool that we were talking about, that I was talking about earlier. So this is ZConf web management console. Okay, so this gives you a brief overview of what different devices are connected right now and where they are connected from. So for example, over here, if you see active LAN, means those are the devices that are connected from inside the company, and WAN are the devices that are connected from outside. Then you have different models of the devices over here also. So 6002 it's the physical ZTeam, the physical hardware that we sell. So these are those devices. 9001 over here are the devices that are running our operating system from the USB. They are not fully converted yet. The OS is running on the USB. And 9002 are the devices that are, let's say, fully converted, and the operating system is installed on the hard drive. That's part of the system. Okay, so this tool is mainly targeted for help desk and support people. Okay, because it gives you some analytics and gives you an overview of what different devices are connected and things like that. Over here, this is again the same tree structure that we saw in the Windows-based tool. Okay. But over here, like once you click on the device, it gives you a brief overview of different properties or configuration of the device, such as the IP address, the MAC address, serial number, and stuff like that. And along with that, the administrator can also do certain actions from this tool. So those actions can be, let's say, shutting down the device, restarting the device, or even taking the remote control of the device from the browser. And lastly, over here, so again, this is the same list of devices that we saw in the tree, but over here you have much more details about those devices. So we have all these details that are available for those devices. Okay, so you could have a look at them. Okay, one interesting thing over here is this, the username that we see. Okay, so this currently this tool is able to communicate with Citrix director. Okay, and this username is the name of the user that is currently or was last connected to his Citrix session from this device. Okay, so you could get that information as well. And in the next version, we'll have similar integration with for VMware also. So you'll have the same details for that also. So as you can see, we are able to communicate across different components of the service providers as well and grab that data and, let's say, show it together. On top of that, all the data that you're seeing in this whole tool, okay, so these are coming through REST APIs that we have, okay, and if you're using your own inventory management tool, in those scenarios, you could consume our APIs, okay, they are standard, they are in a standard format that's defined. So you could consume those APIs and inject this data in your own inventory management tool also, and let's say manage the hardware devices from there. So you're not bound to this tool only. Okay, so this can be like the same data can be used with other tools as well if needed. So from the demo point of view, I mean, this is a very brief overview that we have. Okay, so in case you have some specific questions for me or my team, yeah, do feel free to write them down in the chat. Okay, if you want to get some more details about certain points, do come back to us on the provided email address, and we'll be happy to have a one-on-one session with you, understand your requirements, and then see like how we can help you in taking your project forward.